Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanamsari Yamuna Tira Vanamsari Jaya Radha Madhava Kund Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kund Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanamsari Yamuna Tira Vanamsari Jaya Radha Madhava Kund Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kund Vihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Baba. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radhe, Radha. Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha, Madan Mohan Radha, Madan Mohan Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaurapimanande. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa. Paribhraj Gachajasto Terasatta Sri Simad His Divine Grace Srila Bhai Charanaravind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Pandiviti Founder Charya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaurapimanande. All glories to be assembled devotees, all glories to be assembled devotees, all glories to be assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. A few words of introduction about His Holiness Bhakti Bhagavad Swami Maharaj. Born to a French Canadian Roman Catholic parents in the province of Ontario, His Holiness Bhakti Bhagavad Swami Maharaj spent 7 years of his undergraduate studies in a seminary before completing his Bachelor of Arts degree at the University of Ottawa in 1968, majoring in philosophy and social psychology. After serving as a social worker and a counselor from 1968 to 1971, he joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1974 and was initiated the same year as Raghava Pandit Das. From 1974 to 76, he served at the ISKCON Ottawa Temple, and from 1976 to 92, Maharaj lived in India, pioneering the new Bhakta program and the Namhatta village preaching program from Sridham Mayapur and the Bhakti Vedanta Youth Services BYS from ISKCON Kolkata. He accepted the order of sannyas on Gaur Purnima of 1985. From 1993 to 2000, he served as a co-GPC for ISKCON Canada and as the temple president for ISKCON Montreal. From the year 2001 to 2004, Maharaj was based in Indonesia, where he helped to develop and oversee 6 rural community projects in addition to the youth hostels. In the year 2004, Maharaj completed his master's degree in education from the State University of Yogyakarta, writing a thesis entitled A Comparative Study of Gurukul and Mondo Pasen Trend. In the year 2006, Maharaj became involved in preaching activity and community development in Cambodia, where he established an NGO called Global Varnashrama Education Social Cultural Organization, also known as GLOVESCO, and is spearheading a rural community called Yashodhapura Ashram. That same year, Maharaj was able to return to India after a long absence of 13 years and spearheaded a rural project in South India called Sakhyadri Sri Krishna Balaram Kshetra, from where courses on Varnashrama College were introduced. He was instrumental in establishing the National Varnashrama Development Committee for India in the year 2007, and in November 2009, he was appointed as the National Minister for Daivi Varnashrama Ministry, promoting rural development in India. Maharaj has concentrated his preaching mostly in Asian countries such as India, Indonesia, and Cambodia. He travels extensively, holds seminars promoting the Varnashrama mission. He has authored several books including Make Vrindavan Village and Varnashrama Education. His Holiness Bhakti Raghav Swami Maharaj. Maharaj, we would like to formally welcome you on behalf of all the devotees of the ISKCON Sri Radha Mandal Mohan Temple. Maharaj, we're very happy to have you here. And on this occasion, I offer my heartfelt prayers to our beloved deity, Shri Radha Mandal Mohan, Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Shri Gaurnitai, that they should abundantly bless you and bless you with good health, long life, and more success in your efforts to fulfill the instructions of Srila Prabhupada and expand the mission of Lord Chaitanya unlimited. Thank you, Maharaj. Hearty welcome to you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा माह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं त्वं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादं सहगना ललितं श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Utamashloka Charitam Sakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyashaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Mukham karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam yat kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Jai Sri Prabhupada ki. So we will immediately get into the verse. I'm very honored and very happy to be here after quite some time. Krishna is very kind to give us this opportunity. One of our favorite activities in the morning is to hear from the Bhagavatam, and that's why we are here. We will immediately go to the verse. This is from the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 9, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Returns Home, text number, 37. Akarnyatma jam ayantam samparetya yathagatam raja na sraddadhe bhadram abhadrasya kuto mama Akarnyatma jamayantam samparetya yathagatam raja naswadhade bhadram raja naswadhade bhadram abhadrasya kuto mama Akarnyatma jamayantam samparitya yathagatam rajana sabdade bhadram abhadrasya kuto mama Akarnyatma jamayantam samparitya yathagatam rajana sraddhate bhadram abhadrasya kuto mama Akarnya, having heard. Thank you. Atmajam, his son. Ayantam, coming back. Samparitya, after dying. Yatha, as if. Agatam, coming back. Raja, King Utanapada. Na, did not. Sraddhadhe, have any confidence. Bhadram, good fortune. Abhadrasya, of the impious. Kutaha, whence. Mama, my. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. When King Utanapada heard that his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to life after death, he could not put his faith in this message, for he was doubtful of how it could happen. He considered himself the most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune. Kindly repeat after me. When King Utanapada heard that his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to life after death, he could not put his faith in this message, for he was doubtful of how it could happen. He considered himself the most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj, a 5-year-old boy, went to the forest for penance and austerity. And the king could not at all believe that a small boy of such a tender age could live in the forest. He was certain that Dhruva was dead. He therefore could not fix his faith in the message that Dhruva Maharaj was coming back home again. For him, this message said that a dead man was coming back home, and so he could not believe it. After Dhruva Maharaj's departure from home, King Utanapada thought that he was the cause of Dhruva's leaving, and thus he considered himself the most wretched. Therefore, even though it was possible that his lost son was coming back from the kingdom of death, he thought that since he was most sinful, it was not possible for him to be so fortunate as to get back his lost son. Translation again. When King Utanapada heard that his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to life after death, he could not put his faith in this message, for he was doubtful of how it could happen. He considered himself the most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune. So the very inspiring story of Dhruva Maharaj, how at a very young and tender age of 5, due to, Srila Prabhupada explains, because he was from the Kshatriya lineage, he felt insulted at that whole Leela or pastime for not getting the opportunity to sit on the lap of his father. And therefore, although he was so young, he took this very big decision actually to leave home. Leaving home is not so easy, especially when one is only 5 years of age. Many people are still at home at the age of 20, 25, 30. Some never leave home. Home sweet home. So this is the one of many, of course, indications of Vedic culture, the potency that is in the Vedic culture, whereby someone as young as Dhruva Maharaj could take this very momentous decision of going to the forest. And as mentioned here in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, his father could not believe that he was coming back because going to the forest, naturally all kinds of dangers, especially for such a young boy. The example, of course, of Dhruva Maharaj exemplifies what our acharyas and what the Vedic literatures stress again and again, that this human form of life is actually meant for tapasya. Tapasya brahmacharyena samena cha damena cha. This human form of life is primarily meant for self-realization, tato brahma jigyasa. Now that we have attained this human form of life, we should understand that it has been attained after a very, very long process of transmigration. Those of us, all of us, I suppose, when we newly come to Krishna consciousness, the simple knowledge that there are 8,400,000 species, and to know that actually before coming to this human form of life, we have gone through all of these species. It means that we have been around for a long time in this material world, and we have been suffering in so many different ways. Therefore, the Vedic culture teaches us that from as young age as possible, one should take to Krishna consciousness, as exemplified here by this story of Dhruva Maharaj. And that is why we have built in the Vedic culture is that understanding of renunciation, of detachment from especially most difficult thing to become detached from is family life. Family life and the, of course, central attraction within family life over and above the various relationships that are established. Family life means actually sex life. And that is what is binding everyone actually in the material world. We are tightly bound by the modes of material nature, and it is all focused and centered on this false attraction of material sex life. There are two levels of rasa, because when we speak of sex life, we speak of rasa. There is material rasa, and there is spiritual rasa. Actually, we cannot live without rasa. We cannot live without taste, because our very nature, that is our makeup. We are created. In one occasion, there were many occasions, of course, when Srila Prabhupada was approached by various reporters, often challenging Srila Prabhupada, why have you come here? Why have you come to America or to England? So many questions actually were asked Srila Prabhupada, and naturally, as we all know, being fully self-realized, he always answered to the point. So this one particular question was being asked, Swamiji, or Sir, what is the goal of life? Actually, any devotee would like to have this kind of question. It's a wonderful question. And there's many answers one can give. In this particular instance, Srila Prabhupada replied, the goal of life is to enjoy. The reporter was very happy. But he couldn't understand what is actual real enjoyment. It is not that we become devotees because we are misfits in the material world and cannot make a living or cannot adjust. Rather, a devotee becomes a devotee. An individual joins the Krishna consciousness movement because he understands that whatever so-called enjoyment may be there in the material world, there is material rasa, no doubt. But that is very chapala sukha, flickering happiness, isn't it? Compared to the unlimited, unending taste and satisfaction that one actually derives by engaging and experiencing what is called spiritual rasa. So we are giving up the lower rasa, which is very temporary, which is not at all fulfilling. And this is what Dhruva Maharaj, as a young boy, he was directed, as we know, by his mother, that the only person who can help you is God. Where is God? He's in the forest. Sadhus go to the forest. Traditionally, nowadays things have changed. There's no more forests to go to. We've cut down all the forests. practicing. So Dhruva Maharaj, as we know, was blessed by Narada Muni, and there are so many anecdotes and wonderful stories in the Bhagavatam highlighting some of these very fundamental principles and practices which, of course, in modern day society, in our society of based on adharmic practices that are practically lost or forgotten. And therefore, our acharyas, that is the vision and the primary meditation, the primary desire, ambition of our acharyas, because they understand what is the desire of the Lord, is to reestablish and again give opportunity to as many people as possible. In the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, when Srila Narada Muni, on the request of Yudhishthira Maharaj, speaks to him about dharma, one of many wonderful and very meaningful verses or instructions in the form of a verse that he gives is very appropriate. Dharma mulam hi bhagavan sarva veda mayo harihi smritam chat vidam rajan yena satma prasidati. So Narada Muni is explaining dharma mulam hi bhagavan, the essence of dharma is to actually come to realize and understand Bhagavan. Sarva Veda Mayo Harihi. All of the Vedic literatures point to that same objective. Hari, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the primary activity, the primary, again, meditation or thought, primary focus for anyone who is a devotee is to smritam cha tadvidam rajan. Oh my dear king, one who is thoughtful in this way should be endeavoring to remember, constantly remember, what is the goal of life, what is the purpose of life, and of course, trying to remember ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we do this, then yena chatma prasidati. All of our desires, actually, it means all of our necessities, all of our material necessities of life, all of our emotional, mental necessities, of all of our social needs and necessities, and all of our spiritual necessities. That verse, actually, when I first came across it quite some years back, immediately reminded me of another most important and often quoted verse that I'm sure most of our devotees who've been around for some time are familiar with, and practically is giving very similar message. Savai pumsam paro dharmo jato bhakti radho chaje ahaitu kiya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. So I just like to touch on this point here regarding dharma, because dharma is one of very special words in our vocabulary as devotees that we should often speak about or refer to and endeavor to understand more and more deeply When in the Bhagavatam we find this kind of explanation, yena chatma prasidati, it means that actually dharma, very important for all of us to understand this point, dharma is not only something on the spiritual and transcendental platform. Dharma is not only the satisfaction and fulfillment of the Atma, or the spirit soul. That is there, of course, and that is the most important. That is the essence. But dharma also, dharma, when we understand it, because dharma can be analyzed through different levels. The aspect of dharma which I find personally is very inspiring, is the dharma that has to do with what is natural for us. Of course, on the spiritual transcendental platform, what is natural for us is obvious. We are an eternal spirit soul, and we are meant to be engaged, as Krishna nicely explains, Jiver Swarup Hoy, Krishna Nityadas. That is our Nitya Dharma, Nitya spiritual dharma, spiritual identity. But we also have material dharma. Dharma is also, is in as much as we can only become fully satisfied and fully realized and fully effective, so to speak, in our dealings with others by realizing our eternal, natural, constitutional position as eternal spirit souls, whereby we will experience full and complete happiness and satisfaction. There is also a dimension of dharma on the material level, which is very important, I would say, especially in our context of modern day society, whereby the vast majority of people, unfortunately, are unable to experience the spiritual dimension of dharma, nor are they able to experience the material dimension of swadharma. Both are swadharma. Swadharma means what is most natural. We have, therefore, a spiritual swadharma that I just mentioned a few seconds ago, and we also have a material swadharma. Krishna speaks about this in the Bhagavad Gita. It has to do with our prescribed duties, and it has to do with yajna also. Yajna means offering, isn't it? So there is a particular way in which we, living entities in this material world, are meant to engage ourselves, both spiritually, of course, as eternal spirit souls in loving devotional service to Krishna, and also materially in such a way that we will respect and honor the natural laws established by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How to live in harmony with nature, how to understand how the natural resources of nature are meant to be properly utilized in the service of the Lord. And this is, of course, intimately connected with the whole concept and principle of Varnashrama Dharma, which is, of course, a major topic which one should not start talking about at the end of the class or close to the end of the class. But this point is absolutely essential. It is essential because it is also fundamental in understanding. Just like when we look at the Panchatattva. Panchatattva means the Lord appearing in 5 features. 5 tattvas, isn't it? Primarily 3 tattvas, but in 5 features. In a similar way, actually, dharma needs to be understood in these two primary natures. Of course, both are extremely profound and deep subject matters, and they should actually be the primary subject matter of of study, of investigation, of research, so to speak, for all of us who are members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And that is why many years ago, Srila Prabhupada, of course, when he introduced the movement in the Western countries, that was, as we know, that was a miracle in itself, that it was happening, and that by those efforts of Srila Prabhupada, we're all sitting here today. But Srila Prabhupada had these two dimensions of dharma in mind very much in introducing Krishna consciousness. Our Vedic culture is, as we hear from verses from the Bhagavatam, it is perfect and complete in that it addresses all of these different levels or dimensions of life. And it is, I would say, this was very much Srila Prabhupada's expectations upon all of us, that in the very introduction of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains how this transcendental knowledge, this knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam will actually answer all of the various problems and issues of the world, and therefore this should be introduced in all the educational institutions around the world. In this way, Srila Prabhupada had great hopes and desires that we as a society, that we as individuals as well, imbibe the message of the Bhagavatam, and that we demonstrate. I would say that one of the greatest challenges that we have as a society in the 21st century, where we find ourselves, is how to demonstrate fully, in a practical way, the very profound and complete teachings that we find in the Bhagavatam. It is not simply a matter of knowledge. It is not simply a matter of jnanam. It is a matter of vijnanam, applied knowledge. We have the perfect knowledge, the complete knowledge. Veda means complete knowledge. And all of that is summarized, of course, within the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it is our duty and responsibility to actually demonstrate in our own individual private lives, and also in terms of society, in terms of helping individuals, beginning with helping our own devotee members of the society realize the practical application of these teachings. As it is customary, we'll leave a little bit of time here for some questions. Our subject matter in any Bhagavatam class, of course, can go far and wide in that the subject matter is that we discuss, because it is connected with the concept and the principles of dharma, and naturally should actually help us more clearly understand what is our duty, what is our mission, what is our responsibility. And the last portion of any Bhagavatam class should hopefully solicit a little bit of response or sharing of thoughts or ideas, either in the form of comments or questions. So if there are any questions or comments, and I see one hand, two hands, yeah. Microphone, yeah, portable microphone.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Very fortunate. Blessed to have your association here and Sister Radha. Thank you for class. And I had a question. In modern times, the majority of the devotees in the city, majority of the devotees living in the city,
Yes.
there are times mostly goes in putting up the family and over and above family responsibilities. Nowadays, many study groups are going on where they are discussing Srila Prabhupada's books, with their mentees, mentor and mentees, that kind of discussion they do. And because of the COVID situation last couple of years, there has not been much interaction with other fellow devotees. Everybody is in their own homes and trying to, only spiritual interaction they have is through the classes, through the online classes and everything. But I had a question to you, that even in a non-COVID situation also, people come to the temple for the festivals, people come for the festival days to the temple, weekends they come to the temple and there are classes being held. But the city life is very taxing and very demanding in terms of transportation, in terms of finance, in terms of responsibilities to the family. So, I want to ask you your vision of more successful ISKCON. How current temples in all the cities across the country, with their own respective congregations, make their spiritual lives more meaningful, more valuable, and what would Prabhupada envision if he were there on the planet right now, what kind of, because in Srila Prabhupada times, many congregations lived inside the temple. They were like full-time devotees. There was not much difference between the brahmacharis and actually Grihasthas. But now many have moved out to the temple. They have their own jobs and businesses, and they have their families. So they are able to chant 16 rounds. They follow the 4 regs, associate with other devotees once a week, and that much they are able to do. Over and above that, our congregations, how do you think in city they can make their spiritual lives more intensive and more successful?
Okay. Hare Krishna. If I understand the question correctly, that even before COVID, more so during the last 2 years, most of our devotees have, in the cities, have been interacting, especially online, and how to help individuals and families who are part of our different congregations in cities, in different places, how they can become more involved in spiritual life and in expanding the movement, right? Something like that. Okay. Yes. It's a very good question, and anyone who becomes a devotee of the Krishna consciousness movement becomes naturally duty-bound, obligated to more deeply and fully understand what is the vision of our founder Acharya. For that matter, what is the vision of all of our Acharyas? But for us in particular, because Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So therefore it becomes absolutely essential for us to understand what was Srila Prabhupada's, I would say, long-term vision. And naturally, most of our devotees, whether it is here in India or around the world, are, as you rightly point out, in the early days, actually, most devotees were very much, were in the temples. Gradually, because many of the devotees were quite young, still not married, as devotees took up to Grihastha life, they lived outside the temple, had different responsibilities, etc. And now the vast majority of our devotees are outside of our temples, and they'll come for festivals, etc. like that, but they're mostly, they have their responsibility in terms of family, in terms of occupation, etc. There are two things I would like to explain, which I firmly, at least that is my understanding in reading Srila Prabhupada's books and hearing his instructions. Our Krishna Consciousness movement is, of course, meant to give opportunities to as many individuals as possible to take up individually in our personal lives the practice of Krishna consciousness. That is one thing, on one level. Simultaneously, Srila Prabhupada expected, desired, and requested that this movement is meant to bring major changes within society. Srila Prabhupada used the word overhaul. One of the purposes of the Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada explains, is to bring a complete overhaul within society by introducing these concepts and principles of Varna and Asrama. In establishing temples in the cities, Srila Prabhupada had two things in mind. I'm summarizing. Two main objectives in mind. One was to have a place, a temple, where people can come, have darshan of the Lord, be nourished by the various activities that are taking place in the temple, and as much as possible become involved in various preaching activities in the city. Like we have these Bhakti Vriksha programs, we have youth programs, student programs, etc. This is one level or one aspect. Simultaneously, Srila Prabhupada wanted that we train individuals to understand what is meant to be the norm and the standard of life in the Vedic culture. In the Vedic culture, the vast majority of people don't live in cities. They live in villages. The norm in terms of Vedic culture, in terms of Vedic economy, when we speak of economy, how many are householders here? Raise your hand. Probably a good number. Yeah, because not so many people are wearing saffron, so it's natural and expected that the majority will be householders. So householder means economy, the question of economy. What many of us don't think about very often or don't realize or don't understand is that there is a very simple formula in terms of, it is one of the four we could say standard sciences. It's called Varta, the science of economics. Vedic science of economics. What is the Vedic science of economics? Krishi Gorakshavanijam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. That is the science of economics. And in the seventh canto of the purport, in the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam, I believe 13th chapter, where Prabhupada speaks about, the chapter is dealing especially with householders, ideal family life. In one of those purports, Srila Prabhupada explains that actually the majority of our householders should be engaged in agriculture. Now this may sound like, wow, we're not ready for this, and is this really practical? So the first point I made regarding city temples, I explained one aspect, that individuals are getting an opportunity to be trained up, number one, and also to engage in preaching activities. Second purpose for our cities is to actually train individuals, prepare individuals and prepare families to actually go back to villages. Maybe many of our temple presidents may not like to hear this. But I have to say it, because when we look at various very clear-cut instructions given by Srila Prabhupada, who knew and also he foretold, he predicted that modern day civilization as we know it will soon come to an end. Prabhupada did not speak these words, as sometimes people speak of doomsday. I'm not wanting to paint or create a doomsday scenario here, but I just want to bring home some very important points made by our founder, Acharya. Srila Prabhupada clearly explained that this whole modern, urbanized style of living that has been introduced since the days of industrialization. Only since the last 200 years we have been going on this tangent. A tangent is like a particular direction that very often is not going in the right way, in the right direction. We are on a tangent that is actually leading us to destruction, both materially, economically, as well as spiritually. So therefore, many years ago, I came to this very clear conclusion and understanding. And this will be maybe a little surprising and to some difficult to accept, but Srila Prabhupada's intent in having our city temples, we should be in the cities primarily to preach to as many people as possible about spiritual life and also about Vedic culture and what is the more natural and simple lifestyle that we can live to give the maximum opportunity to our children to become Krishna conscious and to give maximum opportunity to as many people as possible also to become Krishna conscious. So, cities, city temples should be seen, or our cities as such, should be seen as places where we can preach. So therefore, cities should be our preaching basis, whereas villages or rural communities should be actually our living basis. We should be bringing up our children in what the Vedic culture advocates as the more natural and simple and more conducive environment for bringing up Krishna consciousness. Now this, of course, cannot happen overnight, but there is an awareness and a cultivation that needs to take place, and that is why Srila Prabhupada, when he was physically present with us, he instructed, he said, immediately establish Varnashram colleges in all of our temples. Why? To actually introduce and train our families, our devotees, in understanding these basic concepts of what Dharma is, what the Vedic culture is. I'm sure many of you have heard Srila Prabhupada's statement whereby he explained that when this civilization will go down, Prabhupada on many occasions mentions that the whole modern urban way of living is unnatural, artificial, and will come to an end. When that will happen, we don't know, but we should not be overly surprised when it will happen, because it is, by its own definition, it is built in to become unsuccessful because it's not sustainable. So in other words, Srila Prabhupada made that statement that whenever that happens, hundreds upon thousands of people will actually come running to our communities that unfortunately we don't have. Prabhupada wanted that we establish farm communities which were meant to be like serving as a stepping stone towards what is the ideal norm within society. So for those who are still in the cities, of course, my recommendation, and Prabhupada's recommendation, of course, is that we endeavor to the best of our ability to practice our Krishna consciousness and to be involved as much as possible in preaching activities, definitely. But at the same time, open the door to this other dimension which is practically not talked about, unfortunately, within our city temples, and which is, to a large extent, unknown to many of our congregational members. And we, unless we actually very attentively hear the instructions given by our founder Acharya, we may find some of these statements as maybe difficult to accept or difficult to understand. So just to close on answering this question, there is an important book that our ministry here in India, referred to as, since 2009 actually, ISKCON Daiva Varnasrama Ministry, maybe 3 years ago, printed 3,000 copies, hardbound, of a book which is very important for all congregational members to read. And the title of that book is called Speaking About Varnasrama. Speaking About Varnasrama was compiled way back in, I believe, 1999. The GBC body had commissioned a group of devotees. This was in the context of Srila Prabhupada's 100th anniversary, 1996. 1996, so maybe 1 year before that, a group of devotees were commissioned to study the concept of community development. And they came out with this one book. Actually, more books were supposed to come out. That's another story. But this one book has come out, and it's extremely helpful because it's 100% quotes from Srila Prabhupada on this whole somewhat forgotten or misunderstood concept or dimension of Varnashrama Dharma. Our society, I would say, in general, cannot be successful simply by being focused in city preaching. And therefore, we've been urging and requesting our city temples to establish a department that is especially focused on reaching out in the villages and understanding this. Many of our devotees in the cities actually could, and I would say should, go out whenever it's possible, maybe on weekends or whatever, to see what is taking place in our villages. That's a whole topic, of course, in itself. But essentially, we should be, my activities in the last 20 plus years, which have been especially focused on Varnashrama Dharma, have led me to this very clear understanding that our city temples or cities are meant to be where we are preaching. It is our preaching basis. But actually, we should be understanding how the Vedic culture, just what is Vrindavan? Why did Krishna appear in Vrindavan? What is the importance of Vrindavan? It is not only the spiritual significance or dimension that is important. Of course, that is the most important, but also from a material point of view, village life, care of cows, producing our own food, living in this natural environment which facilitates a more simple, natural, spontaneous relationship between individuals, you see. When we're living and working in an artificial environment, we're already facing so many challenges that make it extremely difficult, even within our own immediate family sometimes, to have good relationships. And of course, spiritual life is all based on, it begins with sambandha relationship, isn't it? And we were talking about this a few days back, how in the Dasamula Tattva of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, out of the 10 tattvas, 7 of them deal with relationship. Concept of relationship is so essential because it is only when we understand about relationship, which has to do, of course, with identity, can we successfully, properly go to the next level. Abhideya, proper activity. So proper activity for us as devotees is being, of course, in the cities, but primarily for preaching purposes, and especially at this time, to understand the value, the importance, and the necessity, and the urgency, I would say, as well, to be in the villages, not only in terms of preaching in the villages, but to live in villages. Again, it is a very, I would love to talk more about it, but there's only a certain amount of time that we have. Anyways, thank you for the question, and I hope it answered somewhat the question. Any other? Real quick. Microphone here. Just say it, Prabhu. Hey, Haribol. I'll repeat it. Speak loudly. No, you have only one question.
So Prabhupada said 50% of my mission is completed and 50% is left.
To be completed, yeah.
So this is clearly shows the desire of the Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So 50 years already gone. Really, I'm very small in my Krishna consciousness. What were the reasons?
Right. So 50% of the mission completed as per the Prabhupada design. And he expressly said that 50% is my Varnashrama,
Yeah.
which is still finished. So my age is very small in my spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. What will now be the reasons why? Because this is not yet reached and it is not even like higher level considered to please Prabhupada. Even there are positive and negative difficulties.
Got it. got it. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So the question is, Srila Prabhupada very clearly, actually in 2015, not so long ago, right, 6 years ago, the GBC passed a resolution, a very short resolution, but basically mentioning that whereas Srila Prabhupada spoke about Varnasrama, and I'm just paraphrasing the exact wording I don't have, but I do know that in that short resolution it mentions that whereas 50% of Prabhupada's mission is yet to be accomplished, therefore the resolution was actually to establish a research committee. So to answer the question, it cannot be answered so easily or so quickly. There are many factors involved as to why we have not taken up this 50% of Srila Prabhupada's mission. It remains largely unfulfilled, and I think most of our leaders within the society will attest and admit to that. It's very challenging, no doubt, and there are many factors involved. So I would simply say the following. One of the reasons why we have not taken it up, one of the reasons why many of our devotees are less aware of its importance, is we have not sufficiently talked about it. Therefore, we don't understand about it. We have not taken the most important instruction given by Srila Prabhupada, as I mentioned earlier, to establish Varnashram colleges. Vedic culture is primarily an educational and training culture, giving emphasis on education and training. When we, for whatever reason, don't take that up, don't provide that kind of education, don't provide that kind of training, then naturally we will be missing out. We will not be successful in attaining the goal, isn't it? So therefore, it is incumbent upon every leader within the society, upon every single temple within our society as well, to take up this dimension, this aspect of Srila Prabhupada's mission. And we should know, I mean, that is one of the basic concepts that is there in the Krishna conscious philosophy, that the best way we can make individual advancement in spiritual life, the best way we can make advancement as a society as well, is to please Guru, is to please the spiritual master, is to please ultimately Krishna, isn't it? So without pleasing such authorities, then the needed blessings and benedictions, because we cannot do anything, we cannot even breathe without the blessings and the mercy of the Lord, then what to speak of, taking up this very massive, most important instruction given by Srila Prabhupada. So reading and hearing, I mean, that's the beginning. That's being emphasized again and again, of course. Sravanam, isn't it? Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So I would urge devotees to get this particular book and to at least once a week start hearing what Prabhupada is telling regarding this 50% of our unfulfilled mission. And of course, simultaneously continue to practice individually and to help in different temple programs, different outreach programs, etc. like that. I believe I need to close now. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers in our temple for giving me this opportunity to come here this morning, and want to thank all the devotees who have attended the program as well. Thank you all very much, and happy Ekadasi to everyone. Hare Krishna. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Samasta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaura Pimanande.